Let's look at question 3.2. In question 3.2, the program must use the supplied arrays. Excuse me. It has to use the supplied arrays. Remember, there's two parallel arrays and two-dimensional arrays to identify all the activities and facilities available on the route selected. Display the selected terminal and direction as a heading and a list of activities and facilities on the route selected. So the user selects, we get a particular code that the user would have clicked on, which would have been a particular terminal on the screen, and they would have selected a particular direction. And when they clicked on those values, there were variables iTerminal and iDirection that would automatically have been given values. So that was pre-coded for us. So we go to that terminal, which is the row, and we go to that column, the values that they had. We go into the 2D array and we get the code associated with that, with the terminal and direction that was selected. Let's take an example. Let's assume that the user clicked on terminal to north. Terminal to north. So in that case, the code is SWA. So that's the code. Then we need to display terminal to the heading. So in other words, in our case, it's terminal to north. So here I'm displaying the code, which is actually not required. I need to display show message terminal, and then I need to display iTerminal. And remember that iTerminal must be converted from int to a string. And then we also need to display the direction, and the direction we get from iDirection. I'm being a bit sloppy here, but I'm hoping that you can follow to get the heading in terms of what terminal was selected and what direction was also selected. So let's assume our code is SWA. We then need to go to each character in the code. Therefore, another loop takes place for I from 1 to the length of this code. In this case, the code is 3, so the length of this loop is going to run 3 times. And as it runs 3 times, we're going to check. We have 10 activities. We go to the activity array, and we want to check each character. I want to check what activity S corresponds to. You will recall that S was C. So the S corresponds to C, A corresponded to aquarium, and so forth. So I need to take the character and translate that into the activity, which will then give me these values here. So I then run the loop from 1 to 10 because I'm checking all 10 values in the activity array. And I'm checking if code I, remember I would have been 1. I'm looking at the first value. This is 1, 2, 3. So I'm looking at the S. And if that equals to code J, J is my inner loop that's going to constantly be changing while I remains the same. I'm looking for a match for that code in the code array. I'm looking for a match. And once I find the match, I then display the activity. It's a parallel array. So I go to the activity array, and at the same position, I display the corresponding activity. And then I break. Break means stop the loop, stop this inner loop, come out of it, and then it goes back up. I becomes 2. It then means I'm looking at the W, And then again, it starts 10 times searching for the W in that array. And once it finds it, it displays the activity. And then that inner loop breaks. And then I becomes 3. It gets the third character and then searches for the activity associated with that character. So that is how 3.2 can be solved. Let's look at 3.3. User selects a specific activity from the combo box. The user must be able to view all access routes to that specific activity, display the terminal number and the direction for that route. So if they choose aquarium, so where are all of these activities for aquarium in the 2D array? Where are all those activities? So which of these codes, which of those codes have an A in it? That's what we need to do. We need to search for all those A's in this 2D array. And when we find an A, we must tell the terminal and the direction. I can find an A here, terminal and direction. And there's also an A here, terminal and direction. So how do we go about solving that? So the first step would be to get the activity from the combo box. I get the activity and store that in a variable called activity. The activity could be aquarium as given in this example. And aquarium has a code associated with this. And we need to know that code because that is the code we're going to be searching for in the 2D array. So let's get the code associated with this activity. So you search the activity array and test if activity equals activity array I at that position. And once I find it, I then get the code and I can stop the loop. So this loop will tell me the code associated with that activity. Once I got the code associated with that activity, I need to search the 2D array. 2D array searching, immediately nested loop. I need 2 loops. One loop controls the rows, the other loop controls the columns. We sometimes use the variable R and C to denote rows and columns. So there's 3 rows, 4 columns. So I'm using pause. In other words, I'm checking the value. This is the value in the 2D array. I check the value in the 2D array and I check the code that I have. And if pause finds it in that 2D array, in other words, it finds it and it's not 0, it's greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, it is found in that particular code at position I and position J. It finds the code. Once it finds that code, then I need to know the direction. Where was that, the direction of that, the J value? The J value, if it was a 1, it'll translate to north, 2 south, 3 east, 4 west. So having the I will tell me the terminal. The I value tells me the terminal if it found the code, and then the J will tell me the direction. I get the direction. So after that if check finishes, I display terminal, and there's my I value that tells me the terminal, and direction is what I just obtained.